the fact that every single piece of clothing that's ever touched Kim K's body is custom made for her, and that's not how normal clothes are.
So what do you know about soccer?
Bend It Like Beckham has Keira Knightley in it.
I promise if I ever post a picture of me being in Bali, it will be in Bali and not at IKEA or anywhere else that isn't actually Bali.
What's a piece of content you couldn't finish because it hit too close to home? And my friend said, maybe an email when I knew I had fucked up, which I love.
Hello, and welcome back to your favorite podcast, No But Actually. It's all about content with your girls, Tamer and Sasha. And we talk about everything from soaring sagas to salty sports players and everything media and content-y in between. So welcome back. Hopefully you came back because you loved our first episode so much. And I am Tamer, your favorite Brooklyn queen, moonlighting as an LA girl.
And I'm Sasha, a Birmingham baddie who's living in New York City as of Friday, this upcoming Friday. So currently I'm squatting, but I will be a New York lady.
She will have her own apartment one day.
I will one day. Aspirational. Yes. And as Tamer said, this is a content podcast. Just to break it down for you, for those tuning in, or if you have a short memory and you can't remember what we did last time, this podcast has 3 sections. Numero uno, because it's a content podcast, the only way to start it off would be with a content dump, which is called Say What You Stream, where we say what we've been watching, reading, listening to this past week. Then we're going to dive into the namesake part of the show, No But Actually, where we offer a hot take, deep diving a content question. This week, Tamer, what do we got on our No But Actually?
No, but actually, when did influencers become fake? And I don't mean fake like friend fake. I mean fake like virtual fake, like computer generated image fake.
Beyond injection fake. And then we'll wrap it up with what I like to call a reverse icebreaker. Once the ice has been broken AF, we're going to hit you with one last cue. This section's called Extra Butter, where we're going to ask you, our fave people, buttery questions and explore your answers from last week. So if that sounds good to you, if you're into that little amuse-bouche of ear dreams, keep listening.
All right, so on to Say What You Stream. Sasha, what have you been watching or listening to?
I will tell you. So last week I said that I was 8 years late. I was watching this old show called The Fall, a Northern Irish crime procedural.
And you also proceeded to speak in an Irish accent at some point.
Yeah, my God. It honestly, I will say that's like part of the draw. Like these people speak in such an accent. Northern Irish accent is so fascinating that multiple times I looked up to see if these people were actually Northern Irish or if they were like British trying to be Northern Irish, because it literally sounds like a fake accent. Like it sounds like if you were Scottish, but then like your grandpa was from Ireland or something. It's just very bizarre, but that's half the allure. And I'll say this, one thing I learned from that show is that Jamie Dornan, who you may know from his less good but more known role of Christian Grey in 50 Shades of Grey, that like if I were on a jury and they were doing voir dire, which is the process where they choose the jury for the trial, and they were like, this is the criminal, he looks like Jamie Dornan, I would have to say, I'm so sorry, but I cannot be an impartial juror. That man is too sexy. And the whole point of the show is that he's like a horrible, depraved, violent, ruthless, remorseful character. And by the end of it, like at the beginning I was like, fuck this guy, but by the end I was like, oh, he's so handsome. So
despite all the things he had done, his looks made up for them. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, but it made it complicated. Like I still thought he was bad. I was just like, I couldn't be an impartial juror here. I'm sorry, I'm not fit to juror. A jury of his peers does not include me. Very good show. I recommend it. And I finished and I'm sad. So if anyone else has any good like British or Irish like crime dramas with some twists, turns, and potentially a very hot male or female,
Peaky Blinders.
please tell me.
Have you seen this?
Tamer.
Cillian Murphy. Oh God.
Ugh. An Irish king. Okay, thank you. Okay, never mind. I don't need your recommendations. Tamer's got me. Cillian Murphy. Sorry, that was weird.
Is that? entire
No, that was really weird.
Okay.
Yes. Number 2, I would say I was watching this show called You're the Worst, which is actually from like 2014 to 2019. I can't believe they had 5 seasons. It's like a Hulu original, I want to say, or no, an FX original. And it's actually a show about everyone in the show kind of sucks and they're like really mean to each other. But I actually really liked the show. And my roommate at the time was like, I can't watch that show because like they're just so mean. And watching it again for the first time in multiple years, I was like, they are kind of mean to each other, but I still liked it. And I realized we don't explore the concept of enough of a show holding up because we talk a lot about shows that don't hold up, usually because like they were probably racist or sexist or misogynist or a rapey is very common reason why a show doesn't hold up, unfortunately. You can pretty much wipe the entire catalog of the 80s. But we don't ever talk about the concept of a show not holding up because you have changed. And so unfortunately, this particular piece of content did hold up for me. So I still like shows about assholes. But I do think there are some shows that I can't watch anymore because I've matured and grown as a person. This is just not one of those shows.
What is one of those shows?
Okay. I used to really like the show Archer. It's a cartoon character. Yeah. I really liked it at the time. Like, I loved it.
People. I know what it is.
Okay. Archer is a show. It's a cartoon about a spy. He's like very much like the spy who shagged me kind of vibe, like an asshole and has mommy issues and very funny, but like when I watch it, it just like doesn't hit the same way. And I think I was like in that stage of my life, which is like early out of college, where it really resonated with me to be like, I'm a childlike, but I have an adult budget. And now I just am like, oh, why did I like this so much? So rip. It didn't hold up. Let us know if you have any shows like that.
My best friend definitely still watches episodes of Archer, like on the regular.
Okay.
So
love that for them. I wish I could still love it. It's painful. It's often painful when you're like, wait, this was so good. I'll also say, well, one thing that really doesn't hold up because it is not good is the last scene of Save the Last Dance.
I don't remember the last scene of Save the Last Dance.
But do you remember that it's a really epic dance scene where Julia Stiles like auditions for Juilliard
and it's like ballet with the chair and she's like doing hip hop. Yes, I definitely remember that.
Exactly that. Okay, so in your memory, that is like a dope dance. She like really blended genres. She dazzled. She broke boundaries. I've actually
recently seen like updated videos that show how bad that dancing actually was. So my memory of it was not good, but continue.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I was just gonna say that was a very much a scene that does not hold up.
Oh, your exact point. I thought you were going to say something else. Oh, because is it like cultural appropriation?
No, it's just not good.
Like, no, she's a terrible dancer.
She's just not a good. It's just not a good dance. It's a bad choreography.
Yeah, it's bad, and she also looks so jerky doing it.
Ugh, bless her.
I feel like I watched this in the last 6 months. Like it blew up on YouTube
or
about
Instagram.
This? Maybe.
Yeah, we maybe even talked about this. Tamer, what are you watching this week?
The first thing I wanted to talk about was something that not that many people could have watched, so I'm sorry, but I thought it was interesting. So my high school celebrated its 50th year of co-education, which is kind of insane that it's only been 50 years. The school has been around for like 250 years, so they were late.
And co-education meaning girls and boys.
Girls and boys, and I would use that term now for all genders, I guess, even if that's not necessarily fair. But there are definitely non-binary and transgender students who are at that school.
People of all gender expressions are allowed to be educated together.
And as they should be.
And before that, it was only boys?
Before that, it was only boys from like 1789 to present.
What?
Is that the year? I should know. I should probably know the year.
Right. Okay, so spoiler, Tamer went to a fancy old school.
Okay, excuse me. I was quoting the French Revolution year. Instead, it was actually founded.
Tamer got her school's inaugural year confused with the French Revolution. This girl is fancy.
And that I meant 1781. Anyway, so the school was started in 1781. Fast forward, they allow women in, and now children of all gender expressions can be there, and it's like totally open. etc. Anyway, so we're celebrating this. And of course, to celebrate, we have a panel with Gloria Steinem, which is so cool, but like probably the most privileged way of celebrating this thing ever. Like you get the most kind of famous, like feminist ever to come. Anyway, it was really heartfelt, I feel like, to see her in a panel with women who the school had selected to specifically ask her, I think, tougher questions. They were women of color, they were queer, really representing for voices who you wouldn't necessarily expect to be there. So I was really impressed. But the thing I was most impressed about was she talked about an
Moment.
excerpt from part of her book, yeah, where the quote becomes always ask the turtle. Have you ever heard this?
No.
So I haven't read the book. I think the book is called My Life on the Road, something like that. And so obviously, like, I'm not super familiar with Gloria Steinem, except that she's a famous feminist. And she talks about the fact that I think she was in college and she sees this turtle at the top of a hill. And she's like, oh my gosh, this turtle is so far away from its home at the pond. I need to help it get back. It's so lost. So she goes and she brings the turtle back to the pond. She's like, I did a great deed. A little bit later, I think she tells someone that she brought the turtle to the pond, and they're like, girl, that turtle spent a month getting up to the top of the hill to lay its eggs, and you just put it back at the beginning. Like you didn't do this right. The turtle is
You
now
fucked
maybe,
it up.
yeah, maybe the turtle won't have babies now, or its babies will die. And so she's mortified and so sad, but she was like, my lesson from that is to always ask the turtle. It's in every situation that I'm in, I always want to make sure that the people who are around me are actually getting what they want. And I think that that's why I have become the leader that I have become, because I always want to make sure that other people are getting what they want and not necessarily what I think that they need. And so it was just a really nice way to hear someone say that. And it's in her book, which I plan on reading now. I just ordered it. So I think it still counts as part of this, but it was just a super interesting and cool experience to get to hear from someone who was so well versed in feminism. She actually created the Women's Media Center. It's a nonprofit that was created to raise the profile of women in media, both people who are working in media and those who are in front of the camera. And so she knew from really the very beginning that media was going to be a huge opportunity for the women's movement. And so also to hear her talk about that was really interesting. And especially in the fact that this is a content podcast, this is stuff that we read and consume and listen to all the time. And she was thinking about it from the very beginning.
Wow, Gloria. Yeah, I guess the one thing I really know about her is that she was part of Ms. Magazine. So it makes sense that, which was a feminist publication, that her whole vibe is like not just liberate women, but liberate women in a publicly available medium,
Right.
which is
So
content.
that was the highlight, I would say, of my week. And also shout out to my school for letting people of all genders in. It's high time. Okay.
About time.
Next thing I wanted to talk about was a little bit of sports. So, what do you know about soccer?
Uh, I know that. Okay, this is the one thing I know. It's 90 minutes as a
Ooh,
game,
okay.
and there's no timeout. And there's no quarters. And I know Europeans like it because they like that they're really low scoring games and they think basketball is less cool because they score so much. But if you ask me, basketball is cooler because the game could go like really exciting at any time. Whereas like you could run around the whole damn like field, the pitch, you can run around the pitch the whole time and like no one even scores any points. And here's the last thing I know is that one theory as to why people who play sports tend to be so attractive is because there's a really strong correlation between the symmetry of your face and body to your athletic ability, like speed. And so like sports and like symmetry tends to be like more favored as a level of attraction. And so they're like, okay, like sports people are really symmetrical cuties. That's everything I know about soccer. And Bend It Like Beckham has Keira Knightley in it. How did I do?
Wow, that was incredible. Honestly, I just learned something from you. This symmetrical thing, that's kind of cool. Interesting.
I know.
I'm going to think about that next time I watch people play sports.
Sport.
Okay, so glad. Seems like you have a really good base understanding of soccer or football, as the world calls it. So, in the past few weeks, there has been a really big ruckus in international soccer. So, FIFA, which is the organization that basically like owns the soccer around the world. It's really similar to the Olympic Committee, except that it's only for soccer because they control
Oh.
the World Cup. FIFA takes like a really large percentage of revenue, and they're like, I guess, the controlling governing body of soccer around the world. So that's number one. Number two is there are different levels of leagues. So let's say that there's League A, B, and C. League A is the top league, B is the second best, C is the third best. If there are 10 teams in League A, at the end of the season, the bottom two teams move down to League B, and the top two teams of League B move up to League A.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
So it's super interesting
Like in
because
death match.
it's a death match, but what it means is that at the end of a season, let's say you're in the number 9 spot. In American leagues, as we know them, for football or for basketball, players will just stop playing. In basketball, in the NBA, you actually potentially get a higher draft spot if your record is really low. So there's this sort of incentive to not play your best players at the end if you're going to be at the bottom of the league anyway. In soccer, though, you can't be at the bottom of the league because then you'll go to the next best league. And so you actually always have an incentive to play really hard. So I actually think it makes it much more interesting for people at the end of the season. And also it's just a pride thing, right? Like you want to be able to stay in your league. And it also gives people hope in every single league, every single year, that you could potentially move up to the top. And so
it's very growth mindset.
Yeah, very
I'm
growth
into
mindset.
that.
So there are really famous teams that you've probably heard of: Manchester United, Manchester
I've heard of that
City.
one. Okay.
Paris Saint-Germain, Barcelona.
Yes.
Okay, look at that. So we're
Real Madrid.
Look at So these teams basically decided that FIFA was too powerful and was taking control of everything, and they were going to create a super league.
Mutiny.
Literally called the Super League, okay? Like unite. And these are the best teams.
A bunch of men making decisions.
A bunch of men. And JP Morgan bankrolled them. I think they gave them like $4 billion. So obviously the context over the past year, teams haven't made that much money. They feel like they need to give FIFA all this money. So they're like freaking out. JP Morgan comes in and they basically have all of these secret conversations about this new league that's going to happen. So a few weeks ago, the Super League comes out and says, we're forming a new league. We're not going to play with the other teams, and we're not going to be a part of FIFA at all. So what do you think happens?
I'm also confused because was it all the good teams who said that? They were like, we're not going to do that. We don't want to get like bumped down to the bottom.
Well, it wasn't about getting bumped down to the bottom. They just didn't want to.
They were like, well, you're taking all our money.
Yeah. And they like made a lot less money this past year and felt like it was an unfair trade because they're so good. Like, why were they giving so much money to FIFA?
Right. They were like, we're not down for this union no mo.
Right.
Actually, it's kind of funny because one other thing I do know about soccer, aka football, is that there's no salary caps the way that there are in American sports. So those people get money.
Yes.
Money.
Yes.
I don't know. I feel like this is like a really good like maybe case study for like business school.
Yeah.
But I haven't been to business school yet. But I'm like, okay, maybe FIFA was like, it's fine. We won't take as much money. And then they were like, never mind, JP Morgan, bye.
Nope. Okay. What happened is actually much more interesting. That would have been like a really great way. So,
I feel like that was kind of like how Amazon did the whole like, we're going to New York, like we're touring America. And then they're like, we're just going to New York.
Yeah, like actually no. So what happened was because, and I think this is an interesting business study case for this reason, because they had really just talked amongst themselves and they were like, oh, we're really good, so everyone's going to be on our side. When they announced it, no one knew, and the fans were so upset. They were like, how could you possibly leave? You know, soccer fans are insane. They're like, we're going to tear down your statues. And we're so upset with you because if you're the best teams in the league, why are you leaving all these other teams by themselves? Obviously, we want to go see the best teams. Like, you're making every other team basically look worse. Why would you do this? So that was one. Fans were really upset. And then FIFA, which I think was like pretty smart of them, saw that and was like, oh, we have all the leverage, and said,
we're going to bump another team up.
Basically, they said, if you don't come back to FIFA, you're fucked for all intents and purposes. You can't play in the World Cup. You can't represent your country at the World Cup level because they are like the Olympic Committee. They are in control of the World Cup. So they said, if you play on these teams, you can't play in the World Cup.
Oh,
And you
because the
can
World Cup
never,
isn't by their normal team.
no, it's
by
by your
country.
country. Yes.
Oh
So the
my
people
gosh.
the organizing body of the countries and of the normal teams is the same. So yeah, FIFA was like, no, you can't play in the World Cup. And you can never like play a FIFA team again. And the stakes are really high. And they said, you're going to be fined because this was literally a coup. And the first team, this was an
A soccer coup.
insurrection. And the first teams that come back will basically face fewer penalties than the ones who have remained. And so to date, I think there are 3 teams that are still that haven't announced that they are breaking off yet, but everyone else was like, "Oh, sorry,
Oh my God.
you're back."
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that level of like, you think you're going to fuck me? I'm going to fuck you.
Yes.
And to me, that is very like mom of 5 saying like, you guys all fucked up. You guys think that if you all do it, I'm not going to get mad at you, but actually the one who tells me is going to get less punishment than all the
Yeah.
others. Like the
Yeah.
fact that they're like, we will be less harsh on the first people to come back, but like more harsh on
Right.
everyone else. Like until what? There's like 2 teams left in this fake Super League.
Yeah. It's
Cringe.
bad. It's
I can't wait for that to be an HBO parody documentary called Coup de Foot. I will say this. Am I a sports fan watching the sports? Less so. I enjoy watching basketball. Am I a fan of the drama surrounding sports?
Oh, yes.
100%.
There's so much
This is
drama.
like an episode of Succession.
Yes.
And especially because I'm sure there's a bunch of princes who have like billions in oil money somewhere saying, "Give me my fucking players back," because they're all raised in Britain, no matter what country.
No
they're
matter
from.
what, they have British accents. I think the funniest part too is like JP Morgan looks crazy. Like we're going to underwrite this new league. Like who thought this was a good idea? Actually, let me take that back. I don't think it's a bad idea. I think the execution was just horrible. Like you didn't get anyone on your side and you thought the fans were just going to be down. Like what hubris it takes to not foresee that.
JP Morgan was playing checkers and FIFA was playing chess, baby. The sad thing, or maybe the happy thing, depending on like what side of the banking moat you sit on, is probably that a bunch of JP Morgan dudes, probably within the 12-mile radius of where I'm sitting right now in New York, were like celebrating. They were popping bottles. They were telling their girlfriends like, "Babe, you don't even know what level of work I'm doing right now," thinking that they were gonna like change the face of soccer, and then they got like totally screwed over by their own hubris.
Completely.
Silly heads.
So I'm shook by that, and I just thought it was a pretty interesting and hilarious piece of a coup that went wrong.
Piece of a coup. Love it.
Okay, so that's your sports news for the week. And then lastly, I have been listening to this young man named Q. Literally, his name is the letter Q. His dad is a reggae artist and thought he was destined for greatness and wanted to give him a cool name. And his album is amazing. And I've been listening to Fearful Heart literally on repeat all day. It's a perfect work song, perfect cooking lunch song. I'm obsessed. Highly recommend.
Those are the activities of the day.
That is all I do.
Cooking lunch. Okay, Q. I'll check it out. I feel like I wonder about SEO. I know the dad was a fan of
No, it's hard to find him. Literally, I looked up Q, couldn't find it, and then I put in Q singer, and the first article says
Schoolboy Q?
No, it says like impossible to search unforgettable lyrics. Something like that.
Oh. Oh, clever. It was like I was not made for an indexed world.
Clearly not.
Lovely. Okay, yeah. I'm going to check out Q. Thank you, Tamer. And let us know what you've been listening to, watching, reading, looking at with your eyeballs, or other senses. And now we're going to get down to the main show. Tamer, tell us a bit about it.
So, as I mentioned earlier, today we are talking about no, but actually, when did influencers become fake? And this is really an interesting phenomenon, I think, the influencers that we have come to know and love, who are people that maybe we know, maybe we've never seen before, they still exist, those people. But there is definitely a rise of influencers who are CGI. They are computer generated images doing interesting things on a daily basis and also getting paid. Okay. They are getting brand deals. They're walking for Balmain. They're kissing Bella Hadid in Calvin Klein ads.
Pearls clutched.
They are they're using YSL makeup. And so what is the world that we're living in where we are buying things from fake folks? To clarify before we do this, I actually love influencers. I have bought many items from influencers. I watch YouTube all the time. I follow lots of people on Instagram, TikTok, etc. I even worked at YouTube. But I think the question for me is there a limit, and should there be, and what does that look like?
You've
So
been hashtag influenced many a time, as have
many a
I.
time, many a time.
I'm not above it.
So first, what are these influencers I'm talking about? I went to our trusty resource, Wikipedia, in my French accent, and the wiki definition. A virtual influencer or virtual model is a computer-generated fictional character that is used in social media marketing as a substitute for a human influencer. Most virtual influencers are intentionally designed by 3D artists to resemble real people in real situations. So, in that definition, I feel like is the first thing that makes me feel kind of uneasy, queasy about virtual influencers. The substitute for a human influencer. In what world is it okay for an image to replace a human in terms of having us buy things? In some ways, maybe it's happening already, but to have it be to have it be written down as if that's completely normal and replacing humans with static images that are not real, that makes me feel like weird. I don't even know how to just find that
It's
better.
uncanny valley a bit,
Right.
because it's like you're not quite simulating a human. You're like this specific corner of humanness, which is posturing, which is already in and of itself fake. Like, which why it's already a joke, because
Right.
influencers are fake humans
Yes.
too in their own way.
Yes, which we will get to as well. So, I want to talk about one of the most famous influencers, one of the most famous virtual influencers out there, Lil Miquela. Have you heard of this woman?
She's the OG. She's very much a fashion staple at this point.
Yes.
Was like, and if you don't know, I really recommend like Googling, like, because it's hard to kind of like, you have to visualize see these people, these non-people, I think, to like grasp this, because they're not like cartoons or like an obviously fake thing, like putting a filter on where you have like double horns on Instagram. It's like truly a fake being that looks hyper real,
Right.
like skin texture in real settings.
Yes. It's kind of like playing a video game, except that you're not controlling the character. This character is made by someone else to influence you specifically. But some of like
Yeah.
the most recent video games have amazing graphics. And so that's kind of what I would liken it to.
Tell us, Tamer, how do you spell it? Lil Miquela?
It's Lil space Miquela. Although I guess there's no space in her handles. So Lil Miquela was created by a company named Brud, and she came to market in 2016.
That's a red flag right there. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Oh my God. Maybe that was xenophobic, because maybe it's like Scandinavian.
I actually don't know why that's the name. But
okay, Brud. If they're American, that's fucked up. If they're Scandinavian, it's chill.
It is created by 2 Americans, but
okay, red flag right there. Brud.
Maybe they have Scandinavian roots. I don't know. Okay, so I found from a TechCrunch article, and I quote, Brud, the actual company behind one of Instagram's most popular virtual influencers, it's a thing, has raised millions of dollars from Silicon Valley investors because this is 2018 and everything is awful, which I thought was a hilarious way of describing the rise of influencers in 2018. But Brud, the parent company, is backed by Sequoia Capital, which is one of the most storied venture capital firms in California and in Silicon Valley in general, probably in the world in general. And what a venture capitalist is seeing when they look at Brud, when they look at Lil Miquela, is something that is very monetizable. In order to get venture capital, the firm literally has to think that there is a possibility that you could make them 100 or 1,000x what they invested in your company. So just wrap your mind around the fact that there are people out there who think that these fake influencers that you see could be worth over 1,000x what they're putting into the company.
Which is millions. So they are thinking
Millions.
it's going to be that a digital influencer or the technology behind it is going to earn $100 million.
Yes. Yes.
It's spooky.
And they are earning that literally off of you, because the reason that it's so interesting that these fake influencers exist is because they are actually potentially better influencers than real humans. And what do I mean by that? They are fake, so you can make them smile, you can make them unhappy, you can make them go to a specific place at a specific time. They're never going to be late unless the person who created them is late. They are not going to show up in a bad mood because the person, again, unless the person who wrote that character is in a bad mood, right? Like, you're dealing
My jaw
with,
is dropped. It's like,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Like, and to be clear, for anyone who doesn't know, I have worked in the talent space for a while. And so, and Tamer has too worked in the field of entertainment. So very familiar with, these are real problems that come along with not influencers, with anyone. Like anyone has scheduling issues. Any human can only be in one place at one time.
Yes.
Any human's going to show up on set, maybe not in the best performance attitude or with insecurities.
Lil Miquela can
human.
be in, right. Lil Miquela can be in 5 places at once on a given day if she needs to be, because it's
bag.
her. She's out here getting that money.
How am I supposed to compete with that?
We
I
can't.
need venture capital.
And
if I had
the issue.
venture capital, I could too.
So yeah, maybe it's time for us to go work at Sequoia. I mentioned a few different ways that virtual influencers had worked with real people. So Lil Miquela collaborated with Samsung as part of their 2019 Team Galaxy campaign. She teamed up with real life supermodel Bella Hadid for a Calvin Klein advertisement and actually fake made out with her, which was crazy because there was some like fake LGBTQ baiting there, because Bella Hadid, as far as we know,
they said it was gay baiting.
Yeah.
Because Bella Hadid is a straight woman making out with another quote unquote woman who's not even a woman.
Right.
She's a fake. Which is funny because it's very controversial to say that women aren't real women, because people use that terminology to describe women who have like quote unquote perfect bodies or perfect lives. But this is literally not a real woman.
No,
like,
she is not a real woman.
A bunch of bros in Silicon Valley were like, yo, Lil Miquela.
Yeah.
To take it, her name is Lil Miquela. Like, that's not even a name.
Apparently she's also was listed within the Times most influential people on the internet in 2018. What is really interesting, I think, is a scene that Brud pulled off with Lil Miquela back in 2018. So I'm going to read this from an article. In 2018, Lil Miquela's account was reported to be hacked by a right-wing virtual influencer, Bermuda is Bay. So for some context, Lil Miquela has friends. She has this guy friend whose name is something weird I can't remember. And I think that maybe he was her ex. Like, there's a whole story there that I'm not.
Okay, sorry. Just to clarify, just to lay the land, this fake person has other fake.
Yes.
When it's like her friend, it's not like her making out with Bella Hadid. It's like she has other people who are also fictions.
Yes, created by Brud, the company, I think, as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. I need to pause because like I don't know if my heart can take it anymore. Like, we are living in a fake world. And also like I'm having like really cognitive dissonance because right at one point I'm just like, we're living in a fake world. This isn't real. This is fake. I have enough real actual problems to deal with. But then number 2, Tamer, I'm like, am I old? Like, is this it where I just like throw my hands up in the air and I'm like, I'm old, I can't deal with this anymore? Like, have willful disconnect with the next generation because this doesn't make any sense to me.
No, it's really difficult. The people who founded it are millennials, by the way. So we are in their generation. And I do feel a little bit like a Luddite being like, what is this virtual influencer thing? But I'm like, okay, this is happening. Let's talk about it. Like, but it is definitely, it's weird. Lil Miquela is, I think, half Mexican, half Brazilian. She looks like sort of, I think, the perfect quote unquote Instagram girl that people want to be. She's tan. She has like big lips.
Full lips, big eyes, small nose.
Right.
The Instagram face, which if you haven't read the Gia Tolentino article for The New Yorker about Instagram face, It's really good.
Right.
Highly recommend.
So she has the Instagram face because that's what she was made. But she also has like hashtag Black Lives Matter on her profile and has actually, I think, raised money for real causes. And Bermuda is Bay is sort of her blonde foil. She is a Trumper, like a right wing woman. And
Oh, sorry. Okay, we're switched to the
yes,
next girl.
to
Okay, I was
Bermuda.
like, how can she be Black Lives Matter and
No. Bermuda, who is another fake woman on the internet who is dating, I think, Lil Miquela's ex-boyfriend. That something like that is the story. Who's also fake, to be clear. So she's a spoil. Okay. Back to the article. In 2018, Lil Miquela's account was reported to be hacked by a right-wing virtual influencer, Bermuda is Bay. A co-founder of Miquela confirmed with the media that he thought some Redditors had gotten to the account. But no, the account hack was architected by Brud as part of an ongoing virtual reality drama playing out on Instagram and other social media platforms between avatars it had developed, all designed to attract media attention, according to people with knowledge of Brud and its plans. It worked. So, literally,
it worked. It did work.
magazines and newspapers were hitting up Brud, being like, oh, what happened? Like, why is Lil Miquela saying all these things? And the co-founders of Brud are like, oh, we got hacked, but they hacked it her themselves. And apparently this is what celebrities do anyway. Like there was a quote that I was reading that said something like, oh, this is how the Kardashians introduce characters to their family and to their show. They're just doing it in a virtual way. And so I can't speak to whether or not that's true. That was just some person's opinion. But if that's true, it is kind of genius. It just, again, is creepy.
I mean, it is clever, and to suggest that let's say, take the Kardashians as an example, or a Real Housewife, or a Vanderpump Rules, is like that drama is also manufactured and fabricated by people on, like, quote unquote the same side. So, I mean, is there validity in the practice that it's coming from them? Like, if it seems so creepy because it's posturing as real, but if we were to, instead of saying like Brud Technology Company, to say like Brud like entertainment, or Brud Studios, or Brud Dinner Murder Mystery Show, but like just like highly interactive, like flash mob. I mean, I feel like that's kind of like what it is. It's like, this is just a highly interactive, free ticketed event to a play, but just like unfolding vis-a-vis Instagram. Right. That's primarily where they exist, these ones that we're talking about.
I know there's YouTube on TikTok.
Because there also are YouTube virtual influencers. My understanding is that the ones on virtual on YouTube, which are called VTubers, are primarily coming out of Asia, and they're primarily performers. So they're like singers and dancers. They do like choreography, which is kind of interesting too, because I do think a digital talent is perhaps more interesting than a digital influencer, which is just a vehicle for advertising. Not that I don't love advertising or influencers, but it just feels a little bit, real people can do that for me. But like a virtual dancer or a singer, which can like achieve like perfect notes or some kind of moves that a normal person couldn't, like, that's really fascinating. This is freaking me out though.
Okay, but I feel like even though potentially it feels less weird if someone has a talent, someone being a virtual thing, it still has the same question of perfection and believing that something that looks kind of real can attain perfection. And I am watching that because I want to see perfection.
Yeah,
that's not actually attainable.
Exactly. When it looks real, when the implication is that it is anthropomorphic, and it moves and looks in the way that human does, even if we like know and like willingly suspend our disbelief, we're still creating unrealistic standards.
I think it's a good point, and that's actually where I was going, that these virtual beings are made almost to make us feel bad, in the same way, honestly, that people Photoshop their pictures to make themselves seem perfect, and then you buy stuff from them because they look perfect, even if they really don't. But there's something that you're like, well, this is kind of a real human. But when it came all from one person or one company that was built and designed to literally sell you things, and they're going to make potentially millions or hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion+ off of that, that feels worse. But then I was really thinking about the real influencers that I follow and the fact that they low-key are fake, and potentially there is a person behind them saying, oh, like you need to take this picture and this is how we're going to Photoshop it. And this is the person that's going to come into your life and cause havoc. So going down that rabbit hole, I ended up finding a recent documentary from HBO called Fake Famous. Have you heard of this?
Yes. So my understanding is that they take random people who are not famous and then try to engineer fame vis-a-vis some tactics and strategies for gaining followers
Yeah.
and adoration online.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I think that they do interviews with normal people in the LA area who are trying to become famous and then choose three that they think are going to be funny and do a good job. So there's one black guy, one white guy, and one white woman. And the person who's in charge of it, who I think is like the director, puts them in situations that look real, but that are completely fake and tries to grow their following. So it's partly by taking these fake photos and partly by buying them followers and seeing what happens. And so when I
Fake
say
photos being like taking a picture in a rented fake
yes,
airplane.
yes, like that's in the
Okay.
trailer. Like literally, they rent a private plane set, and so he gets in the plane and takes a picture as if he's on a private jet, and is just like, "This is ridiculous." Another clip from the trailer is the woman says that she's at a spa and she has cucumbers over her eyes and she's laying in this bath with rose petals. The camera zooms out and you see that she's just in a kiddie pool and she just put her head behind her and they put like flowers there and so then they take a close-up photo and it says that she is in some fancy spa in LA and really she was just in someone's backyard. And so
Wow.
it basically just lifts the veil on how easy it is to pretend to have something and honestly makes me so much more curious about people's photos that seem really fancy.
And I
There's
will say, devil's advocate, as someone who has visited my homeland of Bali, Indonesia, highly trafficked vacation destination, and a favorite among influencers and newlyweds, I have had a bath that was filled with rose petals, and it was extremely difficult to take a photo of myself looking cute. It was either not enough roses, my titties were showing, I did not look cute, my wet hair was everywhere. I did try to get my boyfriend at the time to take a photo of me. It did not work out. So while I can say that much of what they do is fake, their photography skills are unmatched.
unmatched. I mean, you truly have to have a friend or someone you're paying to take all these photos for you. And I think that's very true. But people are just putting in a lot of money into making something fake look real. The other thing you talked about Bali, I don't remember if it was on this trailer or if it was like in the mix of things that I saw on my rabbit hole when I was looking this up. But there was a woman, an Instagram influencer who took the series of photos that she was in Bali, Indonesia, and then like a week later was like, actually, this was at IKEA. I went to the like wooden kitchen
Jungle
part,
section.
literally, and I took pictures and said I was in Bali, but I wasn't. And she was trying to say the people who you think are doing these crazy things are not doing it.
And even when you get to Bali, half of the things there are photo ops. There's like these really cool swings in the jungle, like near rice paddies, and they literally have lines for hours of people waiting, and you go on the swing and get your photo taken. Like they make it look like you're going swinging in the jungle and you're literally getting your photo taken. So, I mean, I just can't, don't even get me started on people taking photos in Bali, but in Bali, that's how the Australians call it. Have you been to Bali?
They say Bali? I did not
They
know
say
that.
Bailey because Bali is to Australia as Cancun is maybe to many Americans because it's the closest tropical
Right.
destination. So when you go to Bali, expect there to be a ton of Australians. I'm serious, they're everywhere. Great people, those Aussies.
Looking forward to meeting many Australians when one day I go to Bali. On my list, but I promise if I ever post a picture of me being in Bali, it will be in Bali and not at IKEA or anywhere else that isn't actually Bali. No. We winked if you were wondering why we're laughing, but it's okay. We promise we're not lying. So, on that note, interested to know, do you feel differently about the influencers that you follow now?
I appreciate, I think, the full bodiedness of an Instagrammer. I luckily don't follow, for my own mental health, too many people who are professional influencers. I mostly, which is to say, someone who lives their life for the benefit of being photographed and for making recommendations. A lot of the people who I follow who have influence over me tend to have some, like a full-time job, or they're artists, or they're friends, and I still get influenced, five sure. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate like messiness and unprofessionalness, and a lot of just architecture accounts so I can look at homes I can never afford.
Ooh, I love
But
those.
and it's interesting
They
because I
might be
think
fake houses though, Sasha. I'm just
that's
saying.
so true. And also I do think, as someone who's recently gone on the apartment hunt, that wide angle lenses for apartment listings should be fake. I mean, am I right? That's basically the
Why?
plastic surgery of apartment listings. Everything that you said about how it makes them better influencers makes them better at selling things, like, and not necessarily more interesting or more creative
Mhm.
and more dynamic. And I'd be really interested in, and let me find one because I know there's a really cool, there's one influencer who's really cool, who's actually a human being who just is very good at Photoshop. And I also believe trans or non-binary, and they make themselves into this creature actually, which is a part of their identity expression. And it's so fascinating, and you never know what this person actually really real quote unquote really looks like. And I think that's cool. I think using high tech visuals to create something that is clearly unnaturally occurring in the physical world that we live in is very fascinating. The idea of someone like creating a fake being and this fake character posed as a real character is very odd and uncomfortable for some reason to me. And I feel like I have like robot threat, which is very much like feeling that they're going to like rise up and take over us.
Yeah, literally same. I mean, I think that the people who make these virtual influencers would say that they are very honest about the fact that they're virtual influencers and they're not trying to compete with or take anything away from human influencers, but I just think if you think that you're not somehow creating or exploring body dysmorphia even further, or you don't think that you're making people have any sort of worse thoughts about themselves based on the fact that they're looking at something fake that looks perfect, you haven't really thought this industry through.
That is exactly the criticism I've heard of this, which is we already on social media have unrealistic and impossible body standards
Mm-hmm.
among people's angles and filters and photoshopping, and the fact that every single piece of clothing that's ever touched Kim K's body is custom made for her, and that's not how normal clothes are. We have set ourselves up for failure. And then to introduce another thing, which is a person who is crafted from pixels, which is an amalgamation of people, that is tough because we were looking at that and we were thinking this is how we should look.
Yes.
And I've heard people on the maker side, I don't know if it was the Brood folks or if it was just other people who make these influencers, but like the people who are like actually the digital artists who are like, this is technological advancement, this is artistry, this is craft, this is performance art. But when it's couched as real and that line is blurred, then it's hard. And I
Yeah.
think even as millennials, as like late 20s ladies who are clever, I think we kind of have this sense of like knowing, and that like many people might think like, oh, how could someone not realize like this is fake? Like, one, it happens at a subliminal message, and two, I think a really interesting study that people have done is they've asked people of different generations to identify the difference between an ad and organic content. And Gen Z are much worse at identifying this is ad or this is paid advertising, this is like paid promotional content,
Oh my
versus
goodness.
Gen Z. So like the lines are getting blurred and blurred. And that's because when we were young, the ads were on the TV between the TV shows.
Right.
And we probably couldn't identify a branded integration the way that like someone who's worked in the business can, or that you might now. And like I look at any time there's a fucking brand and something, I'm like, I wonder how much they paid for
I
that.
for sure. I'm like, it's not just there.
Yeah, and there's nothing, no such thing as organic. But like Gen Z, because it's all happening on the same platform that like you're messaging your friends and you're
Right.
seeing your mom like post dog photos. Like I do think about next generations and how they'll be able to parse that.
And if they won't be able to parse it, and if there are virtual influencers in the world and virtual people, virtual teachers teaching your students, like whatever that looks like, how do we adjust to that world? This is only the beginning.
Okay, I actually found the one I was thinking of. So I sent it to you, Tamer. And for anyone else who's curious, look it up on Instagram. This person is called Anthropomorph, like anthropology, and then morph. But the O between the O of anthro is a 0. And this person identifies as they slash it. And the person it's hard to tell if this is really high quality in camera effects, which I think yes, which is to say like they're actually like crafted masks that the person wears, like makeup plus digital manipulation, but you never see the person's actual face. But it's kind of like this interesting alien style character that I think is actually this is really cool because it's very clearly not real and not presented as real. It's presented as like this is imagination come to life vis-a-vis Instagram. And I think it's really cool, actually. It's kind of freaky deaky if you're not really into sci-fi. It might not like resonate with you because it does not look like a normal
Yeah, like
person.
definitely warning, like you might be really freaked out, but
Yeah,
the artistry is definitely there and it's scary.
and it is different, I suppose. This is the way that I've seen kind of like non-real, virtual, digital, um, manipulated kind of personas come to play on the internet, which I think is and we can't discount the fact that the internet, one of the best things about the internet is being someone else, or being your true self, even. Maybe it's not even someone else. And I think that's really interesting. I think when it becomes that your icon or your influencer or your like guiding light is not who you think they are, and they are like constructed in a way to convey something that's quote unquote relatable, but they're like literally don't exist. Now that's what I find freaky deaky.
Same. So, dear listeners, let us know, are virtual influencers freaky? Is the world going to turn virtual? Are our kids, teachers, and maybe even friends in the future going to be virtual? What does that actually look like? Let us know what you think. We think it's freaky, but we are happy to hear other opinions too.
And if you have any favorite or non-favorite influencers, real, virtual, or otherwise, let us know too. We'd love to hit them with a follow.
Maybe.
She's stingy. She's got to keep a good ratio. I'll maybe follow them. Tamer, she's got a higher bar.
Okay, friends. So we are now on to our last topic, extra butter. Okay, so what was our buttery question for today, Sasha?
So, our buttery question was, what is a piece of content that you were not able to finish because it hit a little too close to home? The inspiration for this was I watched episode 3 and only episode 3 because I was watching with a friend and I'm a good friend. I'll start midway through of Demi Lovato's new docu series on YouTube Originals called Dancing with the Devil. It was a really good. However, I could not watch anymore because it is so compelling, and I have family who have addiction issues. And so I was watching it and I turned to my friend. I said, I don't think I can watch any more of this. And she said, oh, does it like remind you of your family? And I was like, no, it reminds me of me, because she just talks about the kind of dark side of her of like wanting to feel love or wanting to numb and wanting to have connection. And for me, like the numbing thing is very much like workaholism or like shopping too much or eating too much. But I was just like, oh my God, this is like hitting really close to home. Like, and Demi, I'm scared for you. And I'm also scared for me. So I had to hit pause on that thing. So
That's
the
real.
inspo for the question of the week for our extra butter. And we asked our listeners, our friends, what they had to say. And here's a couple of their answers.
One was Judas and the Black Messiah, which I thought was really interesting because it just became a super critically acclaimed film. I would say it was the first film that was nominated for Oscars that I think had an all Black producing team. I think usually when I think of civil rights movies, it feels far away. Like it definitely feels relevant to me as a Black woman. And I see myself in some of those struggles and know that, you know, maybe my grandparents were at some of those marches, et cetera. But I have never felt like I couldn't watch it, like it hit too close. And so it was just really interesting to hear my friend's response about how she couldn't watch Judas and the Black Messiah. I think especially in the context of it was just being lauded as such a good film, and there was not really that much written about how it could be potentially difficult to watch for people. And so she just reminded me that that could be true.
I didn't know your family is. Wait, is your family from the South?
So my mom's family is from the South, and from South Carolina and Georgia. And then my grandparents, my maternal grandparents moved to New York during the Great Migration. And my mom grew up in New York. My dad's family is from the Caribbean, from a tiny island. And his mom moved to New York when, I think, right before she had my dad. Like, my dad was born in New York, and then he grew up in New York.
But I just realized as you were saying that, that's actually ignorant of me to just associate civil rights marches with the South, which I do because I'm from the South, but civil rights movements and marches took place and do take place everywhere, not just in the American South, thank God.
But actually, when I think of the civil rights, I also think of the South, also potentially because the stories I've heard of it, like my family was in the South during that time, or could go back because they had, cousins and things in the South, even if they were already in New York. So I think of it as a Southern thing too. I think that's also how we learn about it. So,
well, regionally, I would say people love to distance themselves from racism and put it all into the South, which is still
so
happening.
It's because I'm from New York that happened. Sorry. So
not Alabama, you. No. I'm just saying, like, it's partially me being from the South, thinking civil rights happens in the South, but also people in the like American imagination like to think of racism happened in the South. So we learn about it in that way.
Only in one part of the country.
Yeah,
for sure.
So,
for sure.
Yeah, a little bit of a scapegoat.
Another response that I got was The Boys, which is on Amazon, and The Boys is a superhero show. So I was kind of surprised at first. I was like, I need more information about this. So it's what would happen if superheroes were controlled by a corporation, and there were people who
apropos
with literally virtual
to the influencers.
Okay. So yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh gosh, I didn't even realize how well that tied in. I'm now
she didn't even grasp her.
So anyway, so my friends are The Boys, and I was like, oh, I'm so intrigued. I was like, what about the superhero situation is triggering? But he said that the second season, there are a few things that are very just conservative, like right wing, that are uncomfortable. And it's not that the show is super conservative, but it's that it shows these two superheroes who are like basically Trumpian superheroes. In the middle of the season, he was like, I can't watch this. Like, it's reminding me of the divisiveness of our country, and I don't like it. And it was basically the superheroes were trying to divide the nation more than they were trying to unite it along lines of race and class, etc. And so that was the part that was triggering. And I was like, oh wow, I watched that whole thing and didn't think about it. But you are right.
It's different for different people.
It's different. No, yeah, I liked hearing from people, because I was like, oh wow, like that didn't hit me that way, but I hope I'm more thoughtful about things like that in the future.
Right. Well, after I asked this question to my friends, I was like, oh, maybe this is kind of a bummer question, because it's basically like, what trauma did you have that prevented you from living your life? But I liked this one from one of my friends. She said Tiny Furniture, which is the movie that Lena Dunham made before Girls. Yes. And she said she couldn't watch it because the main character, her fear was that she was like the main character, and all the traits that she didn't like about this main character were things that she like maybe saw in herself. And I was like, that is so real. And like my friend is not chubby, but like as a chubby person, like who watched Girls while it was out, like I feel like probably every chubby, artsy, cool girl who was a little out there was like, fuck, am I Hannah Horvath? Like I definitely was like, please say that's not me. So hashtag relate. Okay, thank you. That's my validation. And then I also asked my friend, and the way that I worded this, like in my text, my friend is like, what's a piece of content you couldn't finish because it hit too close to home? And my friend said, maybe an email when I knew I had fucked up, which I love. The content for her was just an email being like, you done fucked up.
I get that. I definitely have avoided emails that I knew were bad. Which is not what you're supposed to do. You need to like open them and reply and have a conversation. But it's
This is a
hard. It's
business
hard.
podcast. This is a career podcast. Read the email.
Read it.
Girl, read your email.
New
Millennial
name,
self-help
rebrand.
book. Oh God. So that's been our extra butter from last week. Next week's question is, drum roll please. This week's question is, if you could consume one piece of content for the rest of your life and only that piece of content, what would it be? It can be a movie. It can be a TV show. I'll say one season. That's all you got. An album. It could be a book. It can be an issue of GQ from 2006 that like really had it all, and it was like a time capsule for you that you will love to read many years later. But tell us what that piece of content is for you. Drop us a line on Instagram, on YouTube, in the comments, DM us, text us if you have our number, but don't ask for it if you don't. And we will see you next week. This has been No But Actually
with Tamer and Sasha. Bye.
Outro music. Bye.